Welcome to Kenyon College Television News. KCTV News is a weekly program highlighting Kenyon news and events. I'm Brendan Keefe.
And I'm Ed Curtis.
Our top story: after 33 years of service, Dean of Students Tom Edwards announces that he will be retiring at the end of this academic year. Kenyon now begins the difficult task of finding a suitable replacement for this legendary man. I filed this story earlier. Tom Edwards came to Kenyon in 1954 as an assistant athletic director. In 1957, he was named Dean of Students. However, he continued to coach the swim team, bringing them to 11 Ohio Athletic Conference championships and a total record from 1954 to 1964 of 81 wins and 24 losses. In February of 1967, the then-new scoreboard in Schaefer Swimming Pool was dedicated in honor of Tom Edwards, who many consider to be the father of the Kenyon swimming dynasty. When Dean Edwards was first appointed Dean of Students in 1957, Kenyon was an all-male college of only 400 students, and now the college has 1,500 students and it's co-ed.
Let's suppose in an evening, this just occurred to me, and I try to express it, that something happened. Say student was injured. There was no switchboard, there was no security, there was no rescue squad. I literally would get the student, take him in my station wagon to the hospital in Mount Vernon that had no emergency room. You had to ring a bell to get somebody to open a door, then to call a doctor, to go in. What I'm trying to say is that it was so primitive that trying to compare what we have now and then is quite different. So.
In 1985, Dean Edwards received the Scott Goodnight Award for Outstanding Performance as a Dean from the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators. Nevertheless, many students cite Dean Edwards as the main source for many of the campus problems.
Well, I think it simply comes with the job, doesn't it? If you're in a position where you're involved with making decisions, then I think that you have to take the responsibility and accountability for those. I think what becomes frustrating, what laments many times, is that with that is miscommunication. So oftentimes what is charged or what is thought is not actually fact, and there can be then misinformation that takes its toll. But I suppose that is also the life of a dean. It's not, I can say this, for there's not a position that one's going to take if they're going to be worrying about what others think or what others feel.
Since 1986, the year current seniors were freshmen, Kenyon has appointed a new provost, a new dean for academic advising, a new assistant dean of students, 2 new deans of student residences, a new vice president for finance, a new director of student housing services, a new director of multicultural affairs, and a new assistant dean for student support services, and soon a new dean of students. All this comes at such a critical time for Kenyon's growth and leadership. What Kenyon's future holds, we can only guess. But what is Tom Edwards going to do?
Sit and stare at the wall a while and enjoy myself. I really don't know. We're going to, Gloria and I expect to remain in Gambier. This has been our home and our life. We continue to be involved in the college and in other ways and in support to get the benefits of living in Gambier. We hope that we're going to be able to travel, to be away. Maybe while all you are here in January and February, I can seek the sun for a little bit.
Dean Edwards says that although he won't be directly involved with the college, that he will remain in Gambier and try and stay in touch. For KCTV News at the SAC, I'm Brendan Keefe.
The college held its annual celebration of the life of Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. last week. The week began with an address by Dr. Frank Hale, Executive Assistant to the President for Multicultural Affairs, and concluded with a visit by the Amani Dance Troupe of Columbus. Other activities included 2 showings of Spike Lee's movie Do the Right Thing and public readings of Dr. King's works. According to Mila Collins, Assistant Dean for Student Support Services and Chair of the Commemorations Planning Committee, the purpose of the week was to both celebrate the contributions of African Americans and remind the Kenyon community of King's ideals. Another event that marked the week was the selection of the recipient of the first annual Martin Luther King Jr. Award. Professor of History Peter Rutkoff, who took home the prize, said that he was happy to receive the award, though he sees a long road ahead for the college as it continues its efforts to fulfill King's vision. He also added, "I hope to see progress in minority recruitment and retention and a larger commitment to selected public schools, showing that education is not the preserve of the privileged."
Tomorrow at 7:30 in Pierce Lounge, there will be a presentation entitled Women's Voices. The presentation is in celebration of 20 years of women at Kenyon College. Ed?
As of January 16th, the Deeks, formerly the Lambda fraternity, announced their reaffiliation with the International Delta Kappa Epsilon fraternity. KCTV reporter Karen Devine has the story.
By now, most of you are probably familiar with the racial incident which transpired between the walls of Old Kenyon last November 11th. The incident, which occurred at a Deke party, was instigated by visiting pledge class members from Virginia Tech's now defunct chapter of Delta Kappa Epsilon. The actions of the Virginia Tech students aroused outrage from all corners of the Kenyon community. They also served to remind Kenyon that racism may be more prevalent than we would sometimes like to admit. Kenyon Deeks were not involved in the actual event and publicly expressed their heartfelt disapproval of racism and announced, quote, "We are Deeks no longer," end quote. They renamed themselves the Lambda fraternity. It's now over 2 months later, and a story that seemed to have ended has taken an interesting new turn. On January 16th, 1990, the Lambdas announced their reaffiliation with Delta Kappa Epsilon. This has left much of the Kenyon community confused about the Deeks' actions and motives. To answer some of these questions, I spoke with Rob Healy, president of the Kenyon Deke chapter, and Mike Garber, a senior Deke.
We decided to reaffiliate basically because we had particular expectations that we wanted to see the Deke International Organization meet, and they met those expectations, and so the time was right for us to return.
When you first severed ties with the Deke organization, did you have any idea that you may later reaffiliate?
Well, it's a tricky question, kind of. I think we weren't sure if we would ever be able to, but we hoped that we could, one day reaffiliate. But a lot of that goes back to the particular expectations we had. So long as they met those expectations, we felt confident that we would one day be able to reaffiliate.
Do you expect Deke International to address the issue of notoriously racist chapters, such as Deke's at Tulane University?
Talking with David Eastlick, who's the director of the International Deke organization, we spoke to him very specifically about the Tulane incident that was documented in Newsweek a number of years ago. He told me over the phone that it was called a slavery party, and that the members of the Tulane chapter were shown in blackface walking down a street in New Orleans, when in fact what it was a Mardi Gras Day march. And it's a march that's participated in by not only the Deke chapter there, but a number of other national fraternities and sororities. And the two men from Tulane, shown in blackface, were traditional torchbearers at this Mardi Gras rite, which is obviously an overtly racist action, and was not tolerated, and will no longer be tolerated. And with respect to the other part of your question, the racial attitudes, certainly there are going to be racist attitudes that are held by members of fraternities in the South, and it's the obligation of the International Deke organization and the international of every other fraternal organization to make sure that overtly racist actions are prevented, with the hope of someday changing racial attitudes, racist attitudes.
Stuart Fitzgibbon, Director of Student Housing Services, spoke to us about the Deke's actions and the ramifications those actions may have on their status here at Kenyon.
I think that the chapter needs to recognize a certain number of consequences as a result of a earlier decision that they made. That it's very possible that by having made the decision to disaffiliate and then reaffiliate, that they have in fact opened themselves up to a number of questions.
Shortly after the decision to reaffiliate was made, Darrell Janey, the president of this year's Deke Pledge class, announced his decision to de-pledge. When I first contacted Janey last Sunday afternoon, he was quite willing to talk and agreed to a taped interview. But by the time of the interview, Janey had changed his mind and decided not to speak with KCTV. Janey did, however, agree to give an official statement concerning his actions. It states simply, quote, "I depledged because of the reaffiliation with Deke International," end quote. Although there have been mixed reactions to the Deke's reaffiliation, only time will tell if the Dekes will accomplish their lofty goals. This is Karen Devine for KCTV News.
Around campus this Friday night, January 26th, Adelante is sponsoring another coffee house from 10 o'clock until 2 in the KC. Admission is free for everyone, so come and enjoy the Latin American music. Brendan?
Despite rumors to the contrary, Dr. Shermer has announced that he will remain at Kenyon as the college physician. This announcement comes in light of recent criticism of the college's healthcare program.
I've been here this is my 9th year, started in 1981, and my class is the class of '85, and they'll be back this year for their 5th reunion, which will be fun seeing many of them. It's been a long time. Part of the decision to remain at Kenyon has been the growing loyalty that I have for the school, the love that I've grown, that's grown for the school and for the students. It's the students that make the difference.
KCTV reporter Colin Parker will have an in-depth story on the Health and Counseling Center next week. Ed?
Jimmy Landry, the popular musician, will be performing in the Shops this Saturday night at 10. The event is sponsored by the Kenyon College Social Board.
Next Monday, January 29th, Greg Andorfer, a member of the class of 1973, as well as the producer of the PBS series The Cosmos, will be delivering the Distinguished Alumnus Address. The address is entitled Television, Taking Them Where They Can't Go. The address will begin at 7:30 p.m. in the Biology Auditorium. And you know, interestingly enough, Ed, Greg Andorfer is from Mount Vernon, and his brother, Jay Andorfer, is the owner and operator of the deli here in Kenyon.
Well, I understand, too, that El DeBarge is rumored to be in town.
That's what I heard, but then again, there's a lot of famous people coming out of Mount Vernon. There's Paul Lynde and Daniel Decatur Emmett, who wrote the Dixie. So,
Well, speaking of Dixie and music, are you feeling creative or need an outlet for the frustration of winter in Gambier? The Craft Center may have the cure for your boredom blues.
This month, the Craft Center begins its activities for the spring semester. Located next to the Health and Counseling Building, the Craft Center offers individuals an excellent opportunity to explore new art forms or just relax with those you already enjoy. It features such activities as photography, run by John Gavrick and Jeff Booth, stained glass work taught by Carol Mason, quilting with Elaine Hartley, and ceramic arts, which include pottery and sculpture, headed by Susan Balboni and Natalie Blake. For the first time, a batiking course will also be offered, the culmination of which will be the creation of a political panel depicting the oppressed peoples of the world to be used as a backdrop to the performance area at Common Grounds, and this will be run by Albie Nash. Beginners are welcome to take advantage of the classes offered in all activities, while the more advanced are welcome to use the facilities to work independently. For the stained glass workers, there's a glass kiln. 2 sewing machines are provided for the quilt makers. Photographers are equipped with a dark room and 4 enlargers, and for those of you who like to play in clay, the Craft Center has a slab roller, clay extruder, 6 wheels, an electric kiln, and a mixer and supplies for individuals to mix their own clay. A small fee may be charged for certain activities, but some funding is provided by the SAC and the chaplain's office. The building is open from 7 a.m. to 12 midnight every day, and all activities are open to students and faculty of the college as well as all community members. Information on times and sign-up sheets can be found on the bulletin board inside the SAC, and for additional information you can contact John DeMarshy, the Craft Center coordinator. We wish good luck to those of you trying some of this for the first time. This is Sam Sandberg reporting for KCTV News at the Craft Center.
The Shops in the basement of Pierce Hall may now be the place to study, watch TV, or grab a snack or two. But today's juniors and seniors remember the days when, on Wednesday DJ nights, the Shops was the place to be. KCTV correspondent Carla Bernberg tells us of a proposal to put beer back in the shops.
In the past 2 years, the shops, located in Pierce Basement, has done a complete turnaround. This once bar-like establishment now no longer serves beer and consequently has become more of a study lounge than a socializing facility. One of the main questions that students tend to ask is why the decision was made to no longer serve beer.
Well, the college made the decision when the drinking age changed to not sell beer in the shops anymore because of the increasing numbers of underage students over the several years to come, to go ahead and anticipate that, to remove beer from the shops for reasons of crowd control. When beer was in the shops, there was a great deal of damage, a lot of consistent vandalism from the shops all the way, consistently, from the shops to outside Pierce. And there didn't seem to be, at the time, with the exception of the fact that students seemed to want to go there a lot on Wednesday nights, it seemed to be a popular night, and often on the weekends when there were programs there. That's about the only time that the shops attracted a large number of people. But the drinking age, as you know, as a student, has just meant all kinds of changes in the way the college could do business.
Just last fall, however, the idea of resuming the sale of beer in the shops was proposed. ARA's site manager, Kevin Freeman, drew up the proposal, and the administration and ARA staff have been meeting to discuss the idea all of this school year. There are many reasons for the consideration of the proposal, just so one of which being the student accessibility to alcohol anyway.
Students seem to want it, and you know, drinking age or not, students seem to find ways to get alcohol. So we thought, well, why don't we look at the possibility of selling it on campus in the shops again. And
although it caused some problems before, Kevin believes that it could be made to work and even be beneficial for the shops.
I would like to see beer return. I think it would give a good, productive environment for the students, but there are many stipulations that we need to include if we do bring beer back. We would have a computer printout of people that were old enough to drink, and then we would check the ID against the people that were old enough to drink and compare it to the computer printout, and then we would put an invisible stamp on their hand, and the invisible stamp could only be read by a device that I myself would hold.
But he also has other hopes for the shops that don't center on the return of beer.
And I just like to see the students utilizing the space more, and this being a good social alternative so that when we do bring beer back, maybe beer won't be the focus, but the other events that we have here will be the focus.
As of right now, there still is no definite date for the reinstallation of beer in the shops.
I would say, I can safely say, we won't have beer in the shops this college year, but we're not throwing the idea out entirely. But before we do it, we want to do it the right way.
Well, as you can see, no definite decision has been reached at this time. So for now, all we can do in the shops is sit, watch movies, and wait. This has been Carla Bernberg reporting for KCTV News.
If you would like your event covered by Kenyon College Television, or would like to suggest story ideas, you can reach KCTV at PBX 5837 or through computer mail on the Academic VAX Computer Network. You can also write to KCTV at P.O. Box 1638, Gambier, Ohio 43022.
Well, that's all the news we have for you this week. You can catch KCTV News next week at the Olin Auditorium at both 7 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. and in the shops all through lunch. In addition, KCTV News will be shown in the Pierce Lounge at 5, 5:30, and at 6 p.m. Also, this edition of KCTV News will be on reserve in the Olin Library AV Listening and Viewing Room.
That's the news from around the Hill.
Have a nice week from all of us here at KCTV News.